All right, everyone. How's it going? Welcome to another edition of Prequel, Origin Stories and Inflection Points by Goodie Nation. I am Joey Womack, founder and CEO, and you're in for a treat. We have some dope founders that are going to tell some dope stories about how they came to be, about how they started their companies. The reason why this is important is because at Goodie Nation, we believe in closing what we call the relationship gap. So this is the lack of connection between founders and those that are influential in business, particularly in tech. And we find that in many cases, diverse founders, so think Black, Latinx, and women, and also social entrepreneurs from all backgrounds have a difficult time getting in contact with influential people. So what does that mean? Oftentimes it means lack of access to financial capital, which we talk about a lot just as a community, startup community, but it also leads to things like lack of access to talent to hire, lack of access to customers, lack of access to mentors that can give guided kind of bespoke advice, which also leads to higher levels of stress and a higher likelihood of failure. And we don't want that for these awesome people. And so we believe by hearing their origin stories, how they came to be, you can see a little bit of yourself in them. That'll begin the relationship development process, and it leads to some awesome things. Right. But at the end of the day, these are just listening to awesome people is just a really cool thing to do. Right. So here's how it's going to go. In a second, we're going to do some quick intros among them. And then we're going to start the origin story. It'll take 4 to 5 or so minutes a piece. And then at the end, I got a little ask for you. But just sit back, relax, and listen to some dope founders tell some dope stories. And so we're going to kick it off with a round of intros. We're going to go to Phil first and then Robert after that. Phil, just some quick intros. How'd you get here? But, name your company, 1-2 sentence description, and where you're checking in from in the world.
All right. My name is Dr. Philip Hickman. My company is Plabook. We are an innovative reading technology that uses artificial intelligence, natural language processing, and speech recognition to help children learn how to read. And I'm checking in from the St. Louis and Kansas City, Missouri area.
Awesome. Robert.
Hello, everybody. My name is Robert Hatcher. I'm the CEO and founder of Aurign. We're an equity management platform and payment processing of music royalties for music companies. And I'm checking in from Atlanta, Georgia.
ATL. Evan.
How's it going, everybody? Evan Leapheart, founder and CEO of Kiddie Kredit. Kiddie Kredit, in short, is the activity management tool that helps parents teach kids about credit by incentivizing productivity and rewarding good behavior. And I'm calling in from Miami, Florida.
Awesome. Next up, Nashid.
Of course, mute. Nashid Ali from Gainvest, coming out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's an online investment platform.
Awesome. Joseph
Akintolayo, coming out of Dallas, Texas. Deposits.com is a no-code and low-code banking as a service platform that brings financial innovation and inclusion closer to communities by removing the technical barriers to entry.
Awesome. Cool. So listen, let's get right to these stories. Y'all. We're going to start with Phil. Again, Phil, how'd you get here, right? What is the story about how you started Plabook?
Well, it actually started when I was very young. I was a struggling reader. And so until around 3rd or 4th grade, my grandmother, Ruby, taught me how to read. And then she later passed away on my 4th grade birthday. But the point was it kind of gave me a fire to really look at the reading issue and become an educator. I later went on to get 5 graduate degrees and a doctorate, and I did everything in the field of education, from a teacher to assistant principals in areas like St. Louis, Chicago, Kansas City. I was a superintendent, area superintendent, assistant superintendent in areas like Houston, Texas, and superintendent in Mississippi. And then I was a national ambassador for the United States Department of Education. But once we really start traveling the world, representing DC and really looking at the deficits, 75% of children in the United States read below grade level. And then we have only 18% of African-American children at 8th grade are proficient readers, and 65% of African-Americans in 4th grade read below basic. And I thought that was, it's a civil rights issue. It's a shame, and it's beyond actually race now when you look at 75% of children. And so I did some consulting for Amazon, did some consulting for Apple, and I felt like, hey, people are developing ed tech technology, and really didn't have the background or the viewpoint that I had from an educator at all levels. And so that's why I started to develop a Plabook, because right now the only way that we are able to assess assess reading, is we quietly have a child read a paragraph and then answer multiple choice questions. And everybody knows just from a common sense level that that's not even basic reading. And it actually is not reading comprehension, because it only, reading comprehension has actually two parts. One is reading and the next is understanding. And so it really made me look at the technology that we have. And so therefore I started dabbling in artificial intelligence, natural language processing, and speech recognition. And so what we did, we developed a reading tool that actually hears the child read. We can have them hear them read all the way down to the phonemic level. And then we use AI to kind of give that analysis. Hard to get here. We had to develop our own speech engine. And so as a minority founder, it's hard to just have an idea and raise money. So what we did was, I kind of put my head down. I started, going to classes, learning how to speak the language, to switch over from an educator to the technology field. The reason why I started out where I believe, and this is just me, that sometimes you use your job to fund your dream. And so at first, I was employed, but I had to let that go because I started really believing in the vision, started seeing it come to fruition. I started going to classes, and I started enrolling in cohorts like Techstar, like Goodie Nation, and all those kind of things. And so kind of build a team around, and we started developing our product. And so now we're in several different states around the United States. We won kind of in a grander sense, top 200 ed tech companies in the nation. And here we are. We're in Texas, Mississippi, Tennessee, New York, Missouri, Kansas. We're all over, and we're changing lives, and we're impacting reading. And so it's hard to get here, meaning that I felt that as a Black founder, you have to put your head down and you have to get traction first before you start getting investment. But we were lucky and fortunate to start winning competitions and great things out there that are supportive of our minority competitions, as well as just the general public competitions that we start winning, and using that money back into the company to start to build the product and have the traction that we have today. And so that's where we're at. We're here. We're changing children's lives, the trajectory of the reading deficit, and we're affecting the national pandemic, which is that of our reading crisis that we have right now.
Man, one time for grandma's one, and then two, how can people get in contact with you?
Well, you can contact me through my LinkedIn. It's under Philip PHILIP1L Hickman. You can contact me through my LinkedIn or Twitter as well.
Awesome. And what's the website?
The website is playbookeducation.com, and that's Plabook, PLABOOK education.com. And I know everybody asks, if you're a reading specialist, why would you spell play wrong? And it's actually correct, because it's a multi-syllabic word. The vowel can scream its name. That's another example of how complex our reading code is.
Interesting. I love it. I learned something new today. That's what's up. So let's go over to our next Is Dope founder. I'm kick it over to Robert from Aurign.
Appreciate you, Joey. I think for me, this all kind of started back in high school. My co-founder, best friend, and brother's a music producer. So, naturally, a lot of us was over at his house just writing rhymes and, rapping and etc. But, in high school, I was a basketball player. I was able to get a scholarship, to college, and, to fast forward. And when I was in college, I tore my patella tendon. So, my whole basketball dreams were over with. And, I went to school for psychology. And then I took a course called Entrepreneurial Thinking. I thought the course would be more so about how to start a small business, but the course was, really cool for me. It used a lot of psychological principles where it uses this method called the lean startup methodology, where you essentially use a problem as your business value proposition. Then you test for that, which, was very researchy in the sense, kind of what I was used to on the psych side of things. So, naturally, I wanted to solve a problem for, my friend, Kevin. And initially, Kevin is, my friend was a music producer that I grew up with. And initially, one of his biggest issues was that he had artists that he worked with on, all throughout the United States. But, if he couldn't get one of those artists in the actual studio, then it would delay his production by, up to 3 weeks. And, he needed to have a quicker turnaround so he can have more artists in the pipeline, more revenue he can generate every month. So the first product that I actually was interested in building was an online recording application, or online DAW, which is like an online recording studio. You can think of it as like Google Docs for recording. And, the value proposition there was to allow artists to record in collaboration remotely in real time. And throughout that process, it was, we started to see a lot of traction from that process. But by that time, I would say I got into the MBA program at Georgia State University, where my concentration was data analytics. It was basically data science. And I became super interested in blockchain. I started to think about the capabilities. This is around 2018. There were a lot of what's called digital rights management systems that were popping up. But I saw that a lot of them were kind of missing a lot of either technical pieces, or they were missing some music pieces. And the issue within those databases at the time in those blockchain applications were that there was nothing to safeguard the data that was coming in. So everybody was selling the value proposition of using blockchain. However, there was nothing to actually verify if the data that was going into that blockchain was actually correct. So, what we decided to do was we discovered ways where we could actually identify music artists when they're recording and they're collaborating, and automatically using that data to create what's known as music publishing agreements, or in the music space is called a split sheet. It's basically, and in a tech world, you can think of it as like a cap table. It essentially outlines all the songwriters that are on the song and their percentage of equity. And essentially what it does is just streamlines the entire process. And, throughout that journey, as you can imagine, it's always tough for, Black founders to get funding, as I believe, less than 1% of Black founders actually receive VC funding. So, the way I kind of made a name for myself in college was winning pitch competitions. I think I won over 20 pitch competitions, including the biggest business plan pitch competition in the United States, called the Rice Business Plan Competition in 2020, which really helped me with my first pre-seed round, which really helped me get some funding. And, then from there, we were also granted the first patent in the United States to actually automate the process of using data to create these music publishing agreements, not only for Web 2, but also for Web 3. And, they really put us in a great position. But, what I would tell, Black founders, on this path is, man, it's a long road, and just stay persistent. I think the fun part about this is the journey of discovering what the product can be, and the actual value propositions, as well as how the type of impact that you can make within the target market that you're looking to help. And, now we're actually re-releasing our product. We're coming off of a private beta, and we're about to release our product now, and, kind of get it out there in the market and see how the market responds.
Dope. So how can people get in contact with you?
Please, man, get in contact. Find me on LinkedIn. You can look up Robert Hatcher, again, CEO of Aurign. Look forward to getting in contact with you.
There it is. And in the previous 2 episodes of this for Black Founders Fund 3, got quite a few former college athletes as well. So a few that were also injured in school too. So I mean, I think there's something there. There it is. Oh, Phil, you played in college?
I played football for the University of Missouri, and then also
oh wow,
Jaguars.
There it is. Cool. So let's so great transition from one type of literacy, I think, to another. Let's kick it over to Evan. Evan, how'd you get here, sir?
So for me, my story really comes from just being a serial entrepreneur. One, this is the project I always wanted to work on, right? When you're a serial entrepreneur, it's like, hey, if you could do anything, what business would it be? And it's always been Kiddie Kredit for me. And it stemmed from an early age. I was the kid that had the lemonade stand. I was the kid that shoveled snow the moment that he could, printed out little business cards, like wrote my name and number on paper and just put them on people's car windshields. Built a computer from scratch so I could burn CDs and sell them to my friends. It was a long time ago, so I can't get in trouble anymore. And that entrepreneurial spirit carried over into adulthood. And when I was, like, I think 19, I had my first like technical business, right? Like a LLC and everything. It was a marketing company that did lead generation for timeshares. But along the way, you know, Kiddie Credit's like business number 9 for me. I would always try to get loans or lines of credit. And because I wasn't smart with my money when I was younger, you know, came into college, got that credit card, $5,000 credit limit, maxed it out immediately. And credit score was always in the dumps. And when I look back on it, I realized that, you know, 95% of that's definitely my fault. But there's this small percentage that it wasn't my fault because I didn't know anything about it. I didn't learn about this thing until I was too late. And then when you start to look at the numbers, you realize there's over 90 million adult Americans that are credit challenged, and 4 out of every 10 adult Americans can't calculate their own credit score. It's like, I'm not in the lonely here. So when I started to look at a lot of the solutions that really talked about credit, I realized that most of them are always taking a corrective approach, nothing preventative. So I always vowed to say, hey, like, how can I do something that teaches about credit earlier? So this idea of Kiddie Credit was in my head for like 10 years, but I didn't start on it until 2018. So I was like, how are you going to teach this in a way that it's not just one lesson that you learn about one day and forget about the other, right? Like when we were kids, we were taught you learn cursive and that's all you're going to write as adults. And like, I literally never use cursive unless it's to sign my name. So I started to realize a common denominator in homes is chores. So I was like, well, maybe we can do something around chores. So that was the basic premise of Kiddie Credit. It was essentially creating a chore tracking app that helped you learn about credit through chores. So think of missed chores like missed payments. The longer you've had a chore, like the longer you've had a credit card. And anytime a kid's asking for something, hey, mom, can I get this? Hey, dad, can I get this? Think of it like an inquiry. But the reason it stayed in my head for so long is like, I'm not a technical guy, right? I wasn't the software engineer. I always thought like an app was like the other side of life, and I'd never be able to get there unless I had like a couple $100,000. Very ignorant along the way, and I just like kind of took learnings along the way and you know, just started to understand how to make this thing a reality. So it was around 2018 that I started building out the wireframes. I had a buddy of mine, a guy by the name of Matt Cohen. He was a non-technical founder too for a startup that he had, and he was like, it's a lot easier than you think. You just got to start to build down the pathway. So we started to create prototypes of how this app worked, bringing it to life. Fortunately, we're able to get a CTO locally, which doesn't always happen. And, you know, really started to make this thing a reality. But again, at that time, 2018, 2019, I was super green around how everything worked, right? Like, you know, I've raised money now, I've raised over $1 million, but like when I started, I didn't know what a safe was, right? I just know that term in baseball. Like, I didn't know what an MVP was. I just knew that was a term that, you know, I know Bron got 4 of them. So I didn't know any of these things and how it came to be. So as I started to learn these things, I was like, I'm again taking that same philosophy around Kiddie Credit to say, like, I can't be the only one that had the problem. It's like, I know there's a lot of founders in my position with great ideas that are trying to break into tech, but just don't know things. And I want to be a part of something that kind of helps give back. So in 2019, I also co-founded the Black Men Talk Tech Conference, which we did in partnership with Black Women Talk Tech. I think they're in their 7th or 8th year this year. So we're doing it again this year in October. Guys, check it out. It's in Miami, blackmentalktech.com, shameless plug. But as I continued along the way, 2020, we did our first crowdfunding campaign. I learned a lot about how that works and, you know, the marketing that goes into that. So that was kind of my first real experience. We raised like a small amount. I mean, it's not, you know, at the time it was massive, right? It was 75,000, and it's like, oh, here we go. And you just start to slowly build on this way. I like to say, as founders, we're always falling forward, right? And it's just been a continual journey of learning for me. I would say the big break for us came in towards the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, when we formed a official partnership with Equifax. Funny story how that came to be. I went on Equifax.com. I was like, how am I going to get in contact with a credit bureau, right? That was like my exit strategy. Like, one day they'll take my little startup seriously. So I copy and pasted my executive summary on Equifax.com. Like, who knows, who cares? And the president of Equifax Foundation replied. He was like, "Man, I've been here over 15 years. I've never seen a 2-gen approach like this. We should talk." So that was where it started to click for me that, like, you may have something here, right? Like, there's massive organizations that are paying attention to what you're doing. Like, keep going. And that's exactly what we did. So 2021 was also a pitch year for us too. We won over 10 pitch competitions. It was also a fundraising year for us too. That was where we raised the bulk of our money. And it's like, man, we're really going here, right? Like, we have a full team now. So the team is, combined between full-time, part-time, and contracted folks. It's about 14 of us. So we're rocking and rolling and really saying, hey, how do we take this to another level? So I mean, it's really been a fun journey for me. It's a continual thing of learning. I'm incredibly grateful to be in this program, amongst some amazing founders too, and just I'm in awe of everybody's stories and their accomplishments. So yeah, I mean, we're here to teach, but more than anything, we're here to learn from parents and learn from other founders on how we can make this most effective for everybody that uses our platform. And if anybody wants to get in contact with me personally, I'm just first name, last name at Evan Leapheart on Twitter or Instagram, or find me on LinkedIn. And for the business, it's relatively simple too. It's at Kiddie Kredit. That's credit with a K, on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn.
Dope. I think this is pretty much the black male edition right here. So black men are talking origin stories. I'll say that. Maybe that's a component of the next Black Men Talk Tech conference.
Yes, sir.
There it is. Cool. So next up, I want to kick it over to Nashid. Nashid, man, how'd you get here, good sir?
All right, cool. Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna take like a 5-second breather right now, just to bring my energy down a bit. How did I get here? Wow. Say first, God, thank you giving me life and all those things. My parents, my dad's a computer programmer. He's a Muslim. My mom is a career professional, Nashid and Lou Ali, degrees, higher education, based out of South Carolina originally, then came to Richmond, Virginia to live. Really solid background from the two of them, and obviously, just in their faith and all of that. Born in Richmond, Virginia, raised in the suburbs. Shout out to Woodlake, Midlothian, Chesterfield County, all that. Yeah, you can't tell somebody like me that you're going to put all this on YouTube and Facebook, and I don't shout places out. Spring Creek Baptist Church. People called me a child prodigy. I was first published at 7, been a writer, I don't know, as long as I can remember. I started writing professionally at the age of 14 for the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Shout out to Penelope Carrington, who was my first editor. I can only imagine the headaches that I used to give her back in the day. I started writing for the paper, and then it got picked up nationally. I think I can't remember the columnist's name from the Washington Post. I think it was Derek Coleman. I'm not sure. I didn't take the time to look this up. But he wrote about my articles, and then that article got picked up by the national news. I was on the NBC Today show, with some people who are no longer there. Shout out Matt Lauer. Then on C-SPAN with Tavis Smiley, Cornel West, Tom Joyner, Al Sharpton, rest in peace, Johnny Cochran. But it was kind of a crazy experience, to be that, out in public and whatnot, like 15, 16, 17. And it's crazy because I actually was thinking right before here, like my heart was pounding so much. I remember that feeling of, being on the stage with, Al Sharpton and Tavis Smiley and Cornel West and all these people that, I admired at that time, and just being really nervous. And I didn't like that. I shied away from the press, and that I'm explaining that because that is so much about who I am and why I don't do a lot of publicity or a lot of press and things like that. But, I'm also trying to, make sure that I put my best foot forward to give people a background on what makes me tick, because I do think that's important. I do think it's relevant to what animates us. I went to the University of Pittsburgh. I would say I spent like 10 years there. They let me bounce in and out. I lived in the Bay Area, lived up in Pittsburgh, of course, lived in Virginia. I was in Los Angeles, in Dallas, Miami, Oklahoma, Boston, just living life, ripping and running. I would recommend, if you're gonna waste some time, do it in your 20s. When I was in Los Angeles, I helped form a high school after school program with After School All Stars Los Angeles. Shout out Anna Campos, Donnie Falalu, Just an amazing team that they have there. And I really liked education. I really believed in it at the time, nonprofit education. I was in Teach for America. I was a teacher, as I explained. But, the issue with Mike Brown really affected me. And I really wanted to go to law school and I wanted to be a prosecutor. So that's essentially what I did. I studied abroad. I was in Tokyo in the Netherlands during law school. I had some really great professors all throughout law school, Dean Hammoudi, David A. Harris, Lori McMasters, who works with Pitt Law, Amy Coco, who I met afterwards, who was just amazing for me. I would say the most violent, the most impactful thing that's happened to me on my journey was outside of, getting married and having kids and all of that, was getting fired. I was a prosecutor right out of law school, and, for better or worse, we can tell a whole story about that one day. That's a whole story, but I got fired and my daughter was like, 10 days old. And I just remember that feeling of like, I'm never going to let someone control my financial destiny again, like ever. The next day I was printing up business cards. I was in the courthouse. I was just running down any kind of client I could find. I'm doing all types of law. I'm doing criminal law. I'm doing orphan law. I'm in the orphan court. I'm in the civil law. I'm in the bankruptcy court. I'm in foreclosure court. I'm all over Western Pennsylvania, just grinding. And there was an entrepreneurship event, a Black entrepreneurship event with a gentleman named Jim Gibbs from Meter Feeder and a Pitt Law professor named Stephanie Dangle and a few other people that I've met. And from that one event, those relationships, they introduced me to the first investors that were on our platform. They gave me the confidence to believe in myself as a leader and as a lawyer and all those things that I was trying to work on as far as building the company. So that one event, I can really trace back. So my origin story is really multi-layered and complex, I think, as anyone's is. But I would say the driving factor is still that feeling of like knowing that I have to control my own financial destiny and feeling that chip on my shoulder of trying to accomplish and trying to succeed and really just pushing. And it's a gift and a curse in a way, because I'll never really be satisfied no matter what I accomplish. But it's always that drive, and I get that from my parents and all the things that they've accomplished, and obviously from my background and everything that I've accomplished already. That I'm just constantly pushing.
Man, super dope. Shout out to all those people. I mean, it's the excellent reminder of that. We're a product of our village, right? All those people along the way. I mean, you definitely are a prodigy and been around greatness and are definitely a current example of greatness yourself, man. But also resilience. The next day after getting fired and stuff like that, I think
needed money, needed food.
Yeah, you got to make stuff happen, right? From those type of experiences lead to awesome things. How can people get in contact with you if you want to do business with Gainvest?
Okay, well, if you want to do business with Gainvest, you can contact us via the website or email support@gainvest.co. I thought you were going to ask me how do you get in contact with me, and my answer was going to be you don't. If you know somebody that knows me, then have them contact me. But I don't answer like cold emails, cold anything on LinkedIn or any of that stuff. It's just the way that I am. Again, I've already explained that. So, but yeah, no. Many blessings to anybody who's reaching out and all that. I'll try my best to answer those who are coming from referrals.
There it is. Cool. Okay, so let's kick it up. We have one more founder. Let's kick it over to my namesake here. Technically, my name is Joseph. So, but it's close enough, right? Let's kick it over to Joseph from deposit.com. Good sir, how'd you get here?
Man, it's a long and winding road. I think I got here because I lost a whole bunch of money one time. If I have to think of like what actually was the thing that steered the rudder in this direction, it would be losing like 1,000 Bitcoin. And so so I have sickle cell anemia, right? So I had to become an entrepreneur because it didn't matter how good I was at stuff or my job. Frequent absences because of hospitalizations just made it difficult. No shade on Mr. Ali. I was a kind of a child prodigy myself. I was published at 9, not 7. So you got me beat. I haven't met somebody that got me beat on that yet. But I, always was good at learning. and solving problems, and I was just kind of stubborn. I'll give you two origin stories, I guess. One of them is, my mom worked a lot, and I was home with my sister one day, and I think I was just complaining. I was complaining about this, that, and the rest. And I know my mom looked at me and she's like, nobody likes a complainer. She said something like that, and I was like, "What? You don't like me? I'm your only boy. I'm the youngest of six, the only boy." I was like, "You don't like me?" I go and I'm kind of like whining to my sister. My sister was like, "Well, maybe just stop complaining and fix things, like solve problems." And ever since then, like my life was changed. And so I always thought that it was in my power to do something after that. It set me on a different course in life. And so that comes to like, teaching myself how to code, to be a technologist, because I always loved it. I was always building computers as a kid, but I wasn't on the software side. I was on the hardware side, hacking Xboxes and all sorts of stuff like that. Even though I don't play video games, but it was a hustle, you would do it because other people did, and that's something that they would want, burning CDs, all those things. So I'm like the hardware side before I got into software pretty later. So I started teaching myself how to code, solving different problems, got into, the blockchain and Web3 space pretty early. I'm talking 2011, 2012. So I just had like random Bitcoin because it was easy to get. Whenever I started building my first products and services, I was paying my developers and Ethereum. I was giving them 55 Ethereum a week. Like if you ever worked for me between like 2014 and 2017 and kept like a tiny percent, you're a rich person, right? But a lot of us early practitioners treated it like currency. We weren't like storing it for future value. And that leads me to back to the sickle cell story. So one day I'm having trouble with my keyboard, take my computer to the Apple store. Nothing's backed up, but there's about 1,000 Bitcoins on there. And then I'm in the hospital for 2 weeks. They're trying to get a hold of me. I typically don't answer my phone or anything when I'm in the hospital. I'm typically depressed while I'm there. And I get out and I try to go pick up my laptop, and they're like, "Oh, Apple takes your security, very seriously. So we wiped your data, and here's a $250 gift card." And at that time, I'm like, "Dang, my pictures from Spain. I had some fire pictures from Spain." I wasn't thinking about the Bitcoin or anything, and I was like, "Oh, this isn't too bad. $250 gift card to Apple." So I got like some nonsense, at the store, just knickknacks. And I was like, okay, well, still got my laptop. Yeah, I lost my data, but whatever, no big deal. And one day, like a month later, I'm just like driving. And keep in mind, 1,000 Bitcoins at the time still wasn't worth like that much, right? And so, but it was a lot at the time for me still. It was like, probably 60, 70 grand at that time was what the value was. And I'm driving and I just let out like the biggest F-bomb ever, right? Like Godzilla level F-bomb, because it all hits me what had just happened. And so I devised a plan to try to get some Bitcoin back. At that time, mining had just started picking up, like there was ASICs, so you could get like a specialized machine just to solve the math problems that, drive the cryptography behind blockchain. So the competition was like stacking like significantly. So I couldn't mine anymore. And so because I couldn't like invest, I couldn't afford the equipment, right? I did buy some equipment, and it's not something to run in your apartment. Extremely loud, like a crying baby 24/7, and extremely hot and all sorts of stuff. So like, that was my last ditch to get it back. And it was like, oh man, these 4 expensive miners and they can't do anything, can't run it, and I was a bachelor at the time, can't have a woman in my apartment running this thing all day, every day. And so I said, let's build a crypto exchange. So that's what I did, right? So 1% of other people's Bitcoin would help me top back up my crypto. So I did that, did pretty well, started learning what it meant to bootstrap a company, to secure user funds, transactions, everything like that. And I got pretty good at it, right? I had thousands of users moving millions of dollars, and nobody ever lost a single penny. I'm Nigerian, so I can have people making that joke or trying to tell that story. You kind of turn your weaknesses or the things perceived about you into your strengths. And so, at the end of 2017, 2018, crypto market starts coming down. It's 1% off of 20,000 is a whole lot different than 1% off of 3,000. Hard to keep a team. Had to make some cuts, and so started thinking, what can I pivot here? And I'm like, well, there's still going to be lots of use cases and killer use cases, and I have some robust infrastructure, store of value, identity, payments, authentication, all these things in API form, so I could essentially sell my ingredients to other people, and as they consume those ingredients bit by bit, I get paid. And so same kind of deal, right? Like just finding a way to get paid for being the road. And so did that, and that started going pretty well. I hedged my bet, and I started a digital agency as well because I got pretty good at building apps and websites for people. And so then I started working for some Black banks and different people in financial services, and I realized, and especially my then girlfriend, then fiance, then wife was always pushing me to play in the bigger market cap game, right? The one that starts with T and not with B. And so I said, well, what's the difference, right? Like crypto was just this like deregulated space where it's easier for me to get started. But, if I, got a chief compliance officer and I really, spent the time, I could do the same thing in the regulated space. And so, and then I was having different things happen on the agency where I saw that, financial services has always been this relationship business. It's all about communication, right? But consumer expectations rapidly changed over the last 10 years. And now the tempo is no longer set by like banks and investment advisors, it's set by apps, right? Like that's what determines what the consumer wants. And so these people who always manage relationships are not techies. They don't know what an API is. They don't know where to start. And it's hurting, the minority financial institutions the most. It's hurting the community banks and credit unions the most. You walk into a Black bank to see a Black face, but you don't walk anywhere when it's a pandemic and COVID-19. And so that let me know that there was a really huge opportunity. I saw that, there was a lot of banking as a service providers start propping up, like companies like Marqeta, which powered Cash App, through a partnership with Sutton Bank. And so I'm seeing how it's playing out and how much consumers love these applications and how it's essentially trust arbitrage, right? People go where the trust is. And so I'm like, well, people trust their community banks, but they don't have the apps. People trust their employers, but they don't have the apps, right? And in the future, it was very clear to me that all acquisition of deposits was going to happen either through a third party or online. And, which is like acquisition of deposits is whatever bank that's holding the funds on your Starbucks gift card, that's $10 billion of free consumer deposits, right? That's third party acquisition for that bank. Same thing with, Marqeta's getting Cash App. When you put Cash App is not a bank. When you put your money in Cash App, right, that's a free deposit that Sutton Bank got. And so, that's third party acquisition and that's digital acquisition. And same thing with delivery, right? So loans, financial services, that is the same thing on that end, right? So buy now, pay later is third party delivery of a loan, right, at the point of sale. Rocket Mortgage, all these other things. So I thought to myself, how can these communities I really care about that are there for the average person, how can I help them survive? And all these banking service providers came and they said, well, we're going to help save you, but only if you know how to code, and only if you have a CTO, and only if you have a big tech team, and only if you know what it means to do a long integration or X, Y, and Z. And so what I did was I took the tools, right, the same building blocks, the APIs, I took the regulatory compliance, and I took, actually application level building blocks, right? No code, low code, the equivalent of a Shopify, a Squarespace, and a Wix. And I made it so that, the people with the most will, right, and who are there, who don't, have lower probabilities of discrimination and all these things, have the opportunity to meet the consumer where they are, which is in this digital realm through modern apps, modern financial experiences, and digital engagement. And so that's how deposits.com happened, because I lost a whole bunch of Bitcoin, and and then I tripped and fell into this really beautiful problem space where I felt like I had an opportunity to create a meaningful impact.
Dude, when you said the situation with the laptop, Oh my God. Like that hurts my heart. So, I mean, oh man, I'm still hurt. I'm still hurt. Let's not focus on that though. I mean, amazing.
Oh yeah. I wouldn't be on this call. I'd be gone.
Oh my gosh, man. Okay. So how can people, if they want to do business with deposits.com, how can they get in contact with you all?
Yeah, so it's in the name. Just visit deposits.com, or if you are just ready to go, you can go to www.launch.new or just launch.new. And if you need to get in contact with me, you can find me on Twitter at J_Akintolayo. That's AKINTOLAYO.
There it is. And I think there's a theme here, right? I mean, between Nashid and Joseph here, I think child prodigies and black men talk origin stories. I think this is something here, man. I mean, I'm no child prodigy. You know, I feel like I'm cool now, but I ain't no child prodigy. But y'all are amazing, man. This is everybody. I told you, you're in for a treat, and again, you got a treat, right? You got a treat. Amazing stories, y'all. Amazing stories. So here's the thing, folks out there watching. I just need you to do one thing: support. Support is a verb. Dr. Key Hallman from Village Market says it all the time. Support's a verb. So here's what support looks like. I think if you could do one of a few things, right? Either become a user or a customer, become an investor, provide capital to them, potentially tell their story or amplify their story, right? Those are some things that you could do. Now, I know you're influential. You are an influential person. You can do this in your sleep. But spend maybe 30 minutes doing that, right? But that being said, maybe these aren't the founders for you. It doesn't fit squarely within your box, right? I am fairly certain that someone in your network can support them. Again, they can either be a customer or a user. They can provide capital to them. They can tell their story, right? And so please spend about 30 minutes right now thinking about either how you can support them or how your network can potentially support them, right? You've heard their stories. You've heard how to get in contact with them. Visit the link on the bottom of the screen for a little bit more about them and the other recipients of the Google for Startups Black Founders Fund 3, as well as all the previous recipients of Black Founders Fund. Click on their card, click on the link to get in contact with them using the warm intro link as well. But please spend a few minutes, at least 30 minutes a day, thinking about how you can support, right? If you do that every month, so 30 minutes a month for 6 months straight, it'll turn into a habit. If you get your people to do it, eventually it turns into a behavior, essentially. And then that behavior turns into a culture of supporting diverse founders, particularly Black founders, right? And so that's how we start to close the relationship gap and help them achieve their potential, right? So it's fairly easy. Think about ways to support them, either yourself or your network. Share the word about their awesome stories. But if you can't do anything else, I know what you can do. You can hit the share button, the retweet button, or something like that. You can post their website, their LinkedIn profile, the Twitter profile, and maybe even a story about them, because many of these folks have been in the news. You can share their story in one way, shape, or form, or even this episode online, which will help to get the word out. Right. So thank you for tuning in to another episode of Prequel Origin Stories and Inflection Points. This special episode for recipients of Google for Startups Black Founders Fund 3. Once again, I am Joey Womack. Let's close the relationship gap by being intentionally good. Stay magnetic and outwork yesterday, y'all.